Yeah, I mean, a part of what we do as music creators, as producers, to a certain extent, is really record music, but we do need to have vocalists at a certain point. For example, with my music, soulful house music, I make sure that I record a lot of vocals, and I see a lot of guys really struggling in that department of getting people who can write music well, who can write good lyrics and good melodies. Some people are good with melodies, they might not be necessarily good with lyrics, and vice versa. Some people are good writing lyrics, but not so good with melodies. And I'm very happy to be joined by Wanda and Jackie to talk about this. But just if I could start with you, Wanda, in your own opinion, what is a well-written song?
First of all, thank you for inviting me here today. It's such a great honor. I'm actually honored to be considered a good writer. For me personally, what makes a good writer? I think, first of all, the ability to touch someone. If a song can give you an emotion, if a song can make you feel a certain way, it doesn't matter if it's a house song, if it's a jazz song, if it's a hip-hop, whatever the genre it may be, the fact that there's an emotion that is given in the song, and then there's a message. There's a message in the song, so the content of what the song is talking about relates with experiences or whatever it is that's going on. So if it touches you in that aspect, I think that gives a songwriting or a songwriter that title to say that, no, you've done something to actually make me feel this way. So it's a storytelling. It's the way that you describe the story, you tell the story. It's the harmonies, it's the melody, it's the tone, your approach to how you sing the song. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a screaming song. Someone can be whispering and touching you in the deepest ways. You know what I mean? So there's many elements to what makes a songwriting or a songwriter a great songwriter.
Yeah, let me get your opinion on this, the same question, Jackie.
What makes a good songwriter? I would say a good songwriter is someone who is always learning, because your craft develops the more you put your energy and your time into it. So there's so many things that so much advice that people can give you around how to write a song, But a lot of that is very subjective, because there's some people who write lots of lyrics and they're really great at that. And then there's some people who write very few lyrics, but the songs are still great. It's the arrangement, it's how they sing, it's all kinds of things. So I think for me, a good songwriter is someone who knows their strengths and develops those strengths and hones them very well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to know about, let me start, ask this to you, Jackie, about people who are good with lyrics and maybe not so great writing melodies, and vice versa. We can deal with it like the two parts. But how can somebody get better with one aspect if they are already good with the other?
I would say if you're really good at writing lyrics, but you're not good at writing melodies, or even vice versa, it's always good to collaborate with other people. Co-writing is the best way to learn. So find people who have the skill that you don't have, and then work with them to develop that skill. You know, it's like they say, you only become better if you work with people who are better than you, you know. So do that. Challenge yourself by working with people who have a skill that you don't have, and be open to co-writing. Because I feel like sometimes we put too much emphasis on the individual being the person who is the songwriter, where in reality, at least in many genres, like in pop songs, if you look at, say, for example, Beyonce's songs, there's like 7, 8 people who wrote on that, you know? So there's like, someone put a line here, someone put a line here, someone put a harmony here. So don't be afraid to collaborate with people, and don't isolate yourself to, you know, to the extent that you want to be the creative genius. You know, there's lots of people who are, but that for me is the best way to do it. Like if you know somebody who writes really well, like Sio and I collaborate all the time, you know, because she writes very strongly. Her lyrical writing is very strong. I'm really great with top lines and melodies. And there are times when I'm really, really stuck and I'm like, yo, girl, help me out, you know? So don't be afraid to do that. And also there's just so many like courses out there that you can take. Like there's quite a few free ones online. There's one by Pat Patterson that I really, really like on Coursera. So yeah, just keep learning.
Yeah, I want to get into collaboration just a bit later, but before I do, Wanda, just still on the topic of honing one's skills, like how can new writers, what are some of the tools they can use to train themselves to be better at writing songs?
Personally, I think, as Jackie mentioned, when you constantly work on your craft, you're constantly researching, you're constantly studying. I mean, not every song you write is the best song, but I think it's important to continue writing. I think it's important to find your sound, because everyone has they have their own vibe. I mean, you can see it from hip-hop artists who have their own vibe. You can tell how they flow. You can tell how they write. So it's the same thing with a singer, songwriter. You find your vibe. You find what works for you. So the more you fail, the more you try, the more you study, the more you research other writers that inspire you, or other people that you like their kind of pattern and sound. You keep trying that, then you find yourself and you find your kind of writing pattern. So the skill with music is that it's a never-ending school. We're constantly learning. There's no one that can tell you, no matter how many years they've been in the industry, that, nah, I know everything and I've got it. There's so much to learn. And like, again, like Jackie said, collaborating. You never know what another person can add to what you're trying to create. So art has no law. I can sit here as a jazz singer, as a house singer, and collaborate with a hip-hop artist, and you'll be surprised what magic can come out of that. So there is no law, and don't be afraid to fail. Don't think that, oh my God, this sounds horrible. People are not gonna throw it out there. That's another thing about music. You have to be brave enough to throw yourself in the deep end, and you hear people's response. Don't be afraid to hear what other people think about your work. And then from getting the response, you sort of kind of find your confidence, because writing is also a confident thing. So it says, I'm confident about my skill. I'm confident about the story that I'm telling and this, whatever it is that I'm doing musically and creatively. So don't be afraid to fail. Go out there, try things, and play it. Like sometimes just play it to your friends, send it to people, and hear what they say. And judging from the response, you will know the direction, and you'll find your sound.
Yeah. If you could put more emphasis as well, I want to know: do you think that in South Africa people are not really open to the idea of having more than one person writing music? You know, like it's almost like, if you are a singer, you are perceived to be, you need to be the forefront person, you need to be the person writing everything, every lyric, every melody. Are people taking advantage of the people around them and people that they can use? Are we doing more of that?
I think there is a lack of education. There's a lack of understanding that every individual, every artist, or any creative has a strong skill. And internationally, we see it all the time. We hear it all the time. The biggest artists around the world don't write their music. They don't write it. But I think it's a lack of education in South Africa, where we are not educated enough to understand that it is okay. It is okay to ask Jackie to write a song for me, because I know I don't have that skill. And because of her strong strengths in that, I probably have the vocal capability and the deliverance in delivering what she wrote. And the big goal is to get a good song. The big goal is to make sure that we are getting a good product at the end of the day. Why I say it's a lack of education, because in this industry, you feel that if you don't own your music and you don't own your composition, royalties and things like that don't come to you. But how are you going to make that money if you don't have a good product? You understand? So we need to understand that it is okay to sit as a team and say, you good at this, you good at this. How do we all come together with our skills and make this a great product? I mean, our music now is growing. It's international standards. We are competing with huge artists around the world. We should now begin to open up those channels where we introduce songwriters into our team, where we have huge artists that have worked with great, and also we're opening up the industry. Come on guys, we can't all be the guitarist, the drummer, the lyricist, the dancer, the many, like it's just too much, guys. Let us also educate ourselves to know that in order to create something successful, we have to work as a team.
Yeah, and also there is this sense of competition, you know, that you get among artists, that artists feel like if you, both of you ladies are on the same genre, singing the same genre, it seems like you are competing against one another, you know. But as a matter of fact, the only way the genre itself grows is when you see yourself as collaborators in a way. You coexist in the same genre, and for their genre to be seen as better is if their genre is producing the best quality music. But if she's lacking lyrically, but she's not, she's afraid to ask you, "Hey, kopon to the lyrics," or you're lacking with melodies and vice versa, you know, it doesn't really do justice for the music and for the genre as a whole. Jackie, I want to ask you about different processes that you take when writing music. Is it always about writing lyrics without the melody? What usually comes first for you? Do melodies just pop up, and how do you actually create the process?
So I always write to music, so people send me stuff, and then I have to write. So it usually starts with the track that I get. So sometimes it's, you know, I get something and I'm really moved by it, and then the melody and the lyrics and like the whole song arrives. It just pitches up, you know, and I don't have to think about anything. And then there are other times where I have to do a little bit more work, and that's when I really appreciate, you know, sort of the small acts of discipline, you know, that I do sort of day by day, because that kind of helps me in times when I have to make music very quickly. So in times like that, it becomes really formulaic. So depending on the structure of the song, then it becomes, okay, I want a verse, I want a chorus, you know, I want this and this. And then you have to like sort of start thinking about the elements of the song and breaking it down, you know, like how long are the lines gonna be? What rhyme scheme am I gonna use? How many times do I repeat such and such? You know, so there's a lot of sort of thinking that goes around making tracks like that. And then there's other times where I just feel like I'm quite happy to sing very little. You know, like there's a song that I did with Cornelius, which, I mean, I think it's like probably 6 words maybe, under 10 words. but it works. It makes sense, you know? So I feel like sometimes people feel pressured to sing a lot. You know, people think, and in Western songwriting traditions, there's all these rules, right? There's all these rules about how you need to have a verse and a chorus. No, a verse, a pre-chorus, and a bridge, and then a chorus, and a verse, and a pre-chorus. And you have like 8 or 10 pieces to a song, which is fine. But then I think coming from, you know, our cultures and languages, sometimes those patterns don't necessarily fit with the languages that we speak or with the singing traditions that we come from. So it's something that I've also have had to learn, because there's times, you know, like you're saying, when you give people your music, and especially people in Europe, and they're like, well, you know, I need a whole song, you know, or they tell you, oh, this doesn't work. And sometimes it's nice to get feedback from people, but they also don't have the cultural knowledge that you have, you know. So I've had to learn how to be like, okay, fine, I get it. Like, you know, we're making music that we hope to get to an international platform, but there's also wonderful and unique ways that we can sing and we can write, that we can teach people about. So that's how, you know, it doesn't matter whether you sing in English or in another language, it's really how you touch people. So I would say a lot of my writing process comes from sort of thinking about those things and trying to stay true to myself, yeah.
Yeah, and just something as well that I want to understand, especially with regards to writers. Sometimes you have people who write really deep lyrics, you know, like something that it's almost like you really have to think about, you know, you don't understand it from the first go, but it's something that you need to get into. And then versus people who would write very simple songs, you know, and is there a space for both of those kind of, especially in today's climate? I'm feeling like there's a lot of easy, simple songs, nothing wrong with that, but is there still space for really going deep with lyrics?
I think there's a lot of room for that. The extent to which, you know, people have the attention and capacity to appreciate that is another story. But I do think that it's necessary, you know. I mean, I'm a firm believer in making music with a message. So for me, like, that's an obvious answer, right? But then there's other times when you want to have fun and you want to do stuff that's light, that's not too serious. And I think it's okay. I think there's room for that. I think as people who consume music, there's so much music out there. You can have any kind of lyrics or any kind of music that you want. So find that music. Don't impose it on people. Don't say, oh, well, Wanda should be singing, you know, she should be singing more complicated stuff. No, if she sings something that, you know, doesn't really speak to you, then go and find someone who does. Because the truth is, there are people who write in that way. I kind of feel like people like to impose what they think that you should do on you when there are so many other people who are doing that very thing. So I think there's room for it. I definitely think that there's room for it. And I think where you find a person who writes in that way, amplify their work and make sure you tell other people about it, because they really are a lot of artists who write in the way that people think, you know, should be written, and there should be space for both.
Yeah, and Wanda, with you coming from, let's say, a soul jazz background, you know, is it kind of, do you feel that it's expected that you need to always be sounding deep, you know, in your music? What is your take with regards to that?
Yeah. I'm more of like a rebel in the industry, because I don't really have a genre. I do come from a jazz and Afro background, because that's the genre that launched me. But I find myself loving house music, and I'm like, Jesus, where have I been? Oh my God, like, you know, this is so beautiful. And then you find that, yes, there is the audience that knows you from that, and they expect you to be there and stay there. And I'm like, but no, there is no law to music. Tell me one human being that listens to just one genre of music, just a listener. You don't listen to one genre. You listen to hip-hop, you listen to house, you listen to amapiano, you listen to everything as an individual. Now, if you take that from a creative perspective, I'm also that human that I can find love and passion in other genres, you know what I mean? So there's no law to that. So for me, coming from that kind of background, that is my foundation. That is the basis of who Wanda is. And even in the house music that I've recorded, you can hear the jazzy tone. You can hear that soulful feel because that's just who I am. But it doesn't mean that I should stay in the one genre. I can do whatever I want. And I think that's the law of music.
Yeah. I want to step out a bit of songwriting, but mainly talk about, just for a bit, about collaborating with producers, specifically because there's a lot of house music guys here, and most of us would like to do collaborations. How do you go about whether you're accepting or you are declining a collaboration request?
Yo, that's a tough one because I get so many. And I get from all cross, from well-known producers, unknown producers, people from other countries. Like, I'm open to anything and anyone as long as it sounds good to me. So I always say, send me something. Send me something. And whatever you send me will depict if I'm going to do it or not. So I'm open to working with anyone. That's one thing about me. I've recorded so many songs. Like, there's a guy that sent me a song and he's like, finally mixed. I'm like, who are you? And he's like, no, we recorded in 2016. I'm like, Jesus, what? He's like, yeah, I remember you came in Pretoria, Goopy Goop. I'm like, yo, I came there. Like, I don't remember, but I'm so open to working with anybody as long as the music sounds good to me. And like Jackie mentioned earlier, my songwriting is similar to yours. I will listen to something and that beat will drive me to what I'm gonna write, and it will inspire me in terms of the melody and the topic or whatever it is, you know, of the song. So when it comes to house music writing, another thing I wanted to say is that I find writing house music easy than writing jazz and soul. Because with house music, it's, you know, you're feeling it, it's, the beat is going, you're going in there. Yo, jazzy. Hey, you must think about the depth of the English dictionary. Like, you feel like it forces you to go deeper because it's more naked. It's more naked, it's nudity, where you have to find the bra, you have to find the panty, you have to dress it up. Whereas house music is dressed. You know what I mean? So you just add whatever elements of you that you want to add into it, yeah.
Yeah, and Jackie, let me ask you, because you do a lot of house music collaborations. I want to ask you about the business aspect of it, because yesterday we had a chat with Julian that some singers would want to discuss business first before we even talk about the music, you know. So when a collaboration request comes, they're like, okay, this is what I want us to do, this is how I work. And then they would say, send me the music, you know. How do you deal with your business process, especially with regards to collaborations?
Well, typically, you send me the music, and if I like it, then we have the business discussion. But yeah, for me, the business thing is very important because, I mean, we've heard all the stories about how vocalists are disenfranchised and all of that, and that's a very real thing. I mean, just as I was walking in, I was having a discussion with someone who did a collaboration with a very big producer, and she was telling me that they took a year to pay her. She got the paperwork like the day before. Songs come out and you don't have paperwork, it's not registered, you know, so definitely, yeah, I think for me, I get the song, and then if I like it, we talk business, and then what I usually do is, if the terms are agreeable, I'll do a demo, and then I'll send the demo, and then if you like the demo, we sign the paperwork, and then I record the vocals, and then you can have your vocals. So I I don't do studio sessions with people that I don't trust, because I've had situations where I go into the studio, you record the song, next minute you wake up and people are like, wow, that's a nice song on iTunes, and you're like, what? That happened with one of the biggest projects I worked on that happened. So I don't do that anymore. So if you are a vocalist, I would highly, highly suggest that you record a demo, and if someone likes the song, obviously it's a working progress and whatever, but the minute they say, yeah, this is a cool song, I'm happy to record this and release it, then you get your paperwork, then you record. I would highly, 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 highly recommend that you do that. Because sometimes even I will do a demo and someone's like, yay, this song is really great. Then when it's time to talk about the paperwork, you don't get it. And I say, that's fine, and I repurpose the vocals and I use them for another song because we don't have an agreement, right? And I will repurpose that. So business is very, very, very important. I think people really underestimate how important it is. If you can, by all means, protect yourself.
Yeah, and just one last question before we take questions from everyone to you, Wanda. With regards to, I'm sure when you mention in paperwork, there's also paper involved, like money. To a certain extent. But I want to ask you, do you have situations where you exchange works with people and it's not necessarily about getting paid advance fees? How do you normally do your deals?
Well, for me, it depends. There are people that you work with and you agree on a number to say that to feature, it's this amount, and they give you a once-off fee, and you go on your merry way. But personally, I prefer to own what I write. So if I wrote it and I have a contribution in it, I deserve the royalties in it. I deserve whatever that the song is gonna make them, or if it's an album, I'm just that person. Because the once-off thing, and then the song becomes big and my heart will be breaking because that 5,000 is finished. Yeah. You know what I mean? So for me, as a creative, I feel that it's important to own whatever it is that you've contributed in the song. And that way you're creating your CV. You're creating your CV. And the nice thing about music is that music never dies. Music never dies. People die, but music never dies. So the money can accumulate for your family, for, you just never know. So I prefer to keep it in my archives. That's me.
Yeah, I prefer that too. I was telling a story about Tumelo the other day. His 2013 song in 2017 or 2018 got included in the Black Panther thing, and if he didn't own parts of the song, he wouldn't be getting paid, and he would be crying over the 5,000 from 7 years ago.
And it's very painful.
It's very painful. I can imagine.
But if I can just add, as a vocalist, you should be getting paid and you should be getting your ownership, right? And the reason why I say this is because if I write a song, if I bring someone in to sing the vocals, I'm going to pay that person the session fee. But vocalists tend to do both. They will sing the song and they will write the song. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to charge someone like 50,000 and then keep, your publishing. Like, obviously, the fee needs to be reasonable, but I don't think people actually understand that. They think that when they pay you, then that means they own the whole song. No, they're paying you for your time. They're paying you for your time. They're paying you for the whatever Uber you're going to get to the studio, the time you're going to spend writing. Because the time that I'm doing all of that, I could have been doing something else. So make sure that you know the difference, right? Just because you're paying someone, it doesn't necessarily mean you're paying them for ownership. You're paying them for their time. And then the writing, the composition side, all of that is non-negotiable anyway. You shouldn't even have to be thinking about, okay, should I take the money so that I can own my publishing? No. Because all of that, once you create something, it belongs to you. Whatever contribution you have, you get your percentage out of that. So composition is one thing, payment is another thing.
But this is why I say it's very important to educate. It's very important to know what you're doing. It's very important to understand the ins and outs of the industry. I hear talent, hey? Talent is great. Talent is beautiful. Talent is something you have. No one can take that away from you. But I think the most important thing before talent is education. If you can educate yourself about how the business industry, how the business side of the music industry works, then you're able to protect your talent. Because we've seen so many people coming out, and the thing about talent is that you come with such a force of passion. You're doing it for passion, you love it, and people want to work with you, and all this shit is happening. All this is happening, and the next thing, you don't see the returns of it. You know, people are praising you. Wow, well done, Wanda. I'm like, well done for what? You know what I mean? Because you don't see the returns. So the only way that you can protect yourself is by knowing the ins and outs of the industry. Surprise these record labels. Surprise producers when you walk in the studio and you're like, yo, I hear you, you're great, but this is how I work. You understand? I know my shit. You gotta be a bitch about it. You know what I mean? And people must go around saying, oh my God, this person is so difficult. You're not difficult. You know your story. You know how to protect yourself. There's books out there that you can download, that you can check. Nowadays it's easy because you can go on YouTube, you can find Instagram, you can DM people, yo, what about this? How does this work? But there's so many channels in which you can educate. Your talent is something that no one can take away from you, even if they tried. You know what I mean? But I think more than anything, educate yourself. That's it.
Yeah, nice one. And that's why we're here, right? You know, to get these kind of also insights. Let's get into a round of questions. Do we have any questions by show of hands? Okay, we've got a question at the back there. It's a nice ringtone.
What? Hi. Okay, firstly, I have a comment. You were talking about educating yourself about the ins and outs of the music industry. I just want to emphasize the part that before you leave the studio, just make sure people have an agreement, because that happens usually later on. They'll sort the things out and send the things to Samra and Sambra and Capasso, and it doesn't always happen that way. And then someone will have a hit song, and then they'll come back years later, and it turns out that they weren't included in the split sheet and all of that stuff. So I appreciate that. But my comment is more on, how do you feel about what's happening now in songwriting? I don't know if you can even call it that, where people take other people's melodies and then they change the words or they change the lyrics. How does that make you feel as someone who spends time in the studio coming up with songs, coming up with lyrics, coming up with melodies, and then you find now someone just takes, I'll take that Yano song, Utando, which sampled, not sampled, but taking the melody from Amifaku. And it's huge, but no one is saying anything about Ami's writing. And no one really cares. And, what's your stance on that?
Okay, if I get my money, it's like sampling, It's like sampling. If people use a part of your melody you have to like register that and say that you got. So and you get whatever it is, 15%, or if you're unlucky enough to sample someone who's like really huge. Like I know Crystal Waters, I think it was Crystal Waters or Alternati, I think, one of the two had a similar situation with Lizzo last year, you know, and so it's like, yeah, like for me, as long as everything is in order, like you can do whatever you want, as long as I get my stuff on the back end. Like the issue is where people don't do that.
That's the thing.
But then you can still litigate. So for me, it's not an issue. If you decide you're gonna do that, then you must know that there are channels to follow. I need to okay it, you know, and make sure that everything is in order on the back end. But if you decide not to do that, then there's litigation. And in which case, there's like, if you're gonna do that and you don't register properly, you're more likely to pay a lot more than you would have if you had approached the artist in the beginning. Because you could come to me and I could be like, nah, I'm cool with 10%, depending on who the artist is. And then you put out the song and the next minute, I'm like, okay, I want 90, you know? So, like, it's really, I don't have a problem with it. As long as everything is fine on the back end, it's cool.
I think the problem comes when it's disregarded. So if I take your melody, I switch it up and do my own thing and don't say anything, that is wrong. In fact, that is illegal. Yeah. You cannot do that. In fact, that song should even be cut off airplay. That is wrong. Another thing I did highlight on education. I think organizations such as yourself, the SAMROs, the Capassos, and all these organizations, we have so many people who want to enter the industry, right? So many people from all over the place, repeating the same mistakes, right? Crying about this, crying about that. You know, you brought up something where people will take a song, a melody, and put their lyrics and stuff like that. I think we should have an institution that qualifies you to be an artist. We need an institution that you need to go through to prepare you for the ins and outs and the do's and the don'ts of how the industry works. So when you walk out of that institution, you have your SAMRO registration, you understand what is being a composer, a publisher, a man, everything. This is a thing that is a must. So if you go into a recording label or into a studio, they need to see that qualification to say, do you even qualify to be here? Because we can't keep on having people fighting about, you didn't give me my 5% or my 12% of the this and that's that, because we've been through that institution that has prepared us to go out and create. And I think when we create these kind of platforms, we are avoiding these problems. We are avoiding these situations where people are fighting about the melody, about the... We need to know, when you go into a studio, you know that if I'm gonna take Jackie's melody, I need to call Jackie and say, yo, Jackie, I'm about to use this thing, and what are the forms that we sign? What do we do so that we don't fight? So I think as an industry, we need to create these platforms for the ones coming in. So when the pool comes in, the pool that comes out is a qualified pool.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
I think on the one hand, yes, we have a responsibility to educate people and to create structures that allow for that education. I do think that something like a school would make it like exclusionary in a way, because then, you know, I think it's everybody's God-given right to create. You know, you should be able to create. So I kind of feel some way about that. But excuse me, sir, are you from SAMRO?
No.
You are?
No.
Okay. So I just want to say one thing with regards to contracts, right? So I know the chairman of the board of SAMRO wrote, I don't know if it was an editorial or an opinion piece sometime this year about women being disenfranchised for their royalties. I don't know if you saw that, where he talked about how, for the most part, women are the ones who lose out on their royalties because people don't do contracts and stuff like that. And there's an organization called Sound Exchange, I'm sure you know it. And what they do is, for producers, if you want to claim your money, you have to send them a copy of the contract. And I know you used to be able to do that. You do that now with, but I don't know if it's still there, where you would like add paperwork to your SAMRO submission. And I just wanted to find out from you, I have a question for you, if there is a way in which that part of the process could be made a bit more formal. So let's say if Wanda and I have a song, when the song is being registered, we submit contracts. And on your side, both those contracts need to look the same before you pay me out. Like, what is the possibility of something like that happening? Because I kind of feel like it's an administrative problem. The issue of royalties and payments to people is an administrative problem and can be fixed administratively, and there are mechanisms in which you can do that.
I'm not from SAMRO. Yeah, I'm definitely not from SAMRO.
Hi. I think the issue is, like, what happens is when you submit your song, you on the list, on the notification form, you have to put in the split. That is as far as SAMRO goes, but we will make sure that the splits correspond. If there's 5 people that worked on the song and they have different percentages, we will make sure that the percentages add up to that amount, like to that 100% before we pay out. So if it doesn't like the money or the percentage split doesn't make sense, then we will contact you directly to ensure that it does. But we won't pay before we are certain that the right people are the ones that we are paying.
But that's based on the assumption that the person who's submitting will submit the correct details.
See, this is why I insisted that before you leave the studio, make sure there is an agreement, like between the parties that are involved, so that you don't later on come back to SAMRO and say something wasn't paid to you when you didn't notify. We can't know what your agreement is in the studio. So we can only go by by the information that we receive.
That you get. I agree. I had a similar experience with a song that I did with Tembi Siete like many years ago, Shondombazan. So the song, we went into studio with Junior. Now, you get in studio, there's the beat, you know what I mean, and you guys sing. Your initial understanding is that it's me, it's Tembi, it's Junior. These are the people in studio, right? Then you go, they probably mix it wherever in another studio, whatever. Song done. Now you're filling in the forms, ne? Tembi, Junior, Wanda. You split the percentages accordingly. You get royalties for years. Getting royalties for years. Then this guy is like, I am so-and-so, I created the beat. Hi, Bo. Where does this guy come from? Do you understand what I'm saying? So from the guy, from Junior who was in the studio, he got the beat from somebody else. He didn't tell us. You understand things like that. So that's why I'm saying clarity has to be clear. Because someone can send you a beat, you think that the person that's sending you the beat is their beat. Kanti, there's a guy in a garage somewhere who created the beat, and now they sent it to you, and now it's somewhere else, then it's a hit, and then you sitting there trying to find your money, no one is listening to you, no one gives, you know what I mean? You are years and years and years of fighting for this thing. So now after years of getting royalties, they had to stop it. So they stopped the royalties for the song until the story is fixed.
And I understand that. And what I'm saying is, I think I really appreciate that SAMRO has made this digital process like so much easier. I actually really love that. But there's something about having something in writing that is finalized for me, which is why I kind of like the sound exchange idea, you know, in the sense that yes, we submit, and then at the same time we have corresponding paperwork that says this is exactly how things are. I kind of feel like people miss out on that part, which is a very, very important part of the whole process. Because there are times where you don't get paperwork, but you can submit it onto SAMRO anyway, you know, and like you're saying, and then you end up in situations where somebody comes back and says, well, no, I haven't had an agreement. So I kind of feel like, although I do understand that there are checks and balances, I feel like having that extra additional bit of paperwork that says, okay, you signed here and you signed here, this is clear, and then everybody gets what they get because it's in writing.
I think it would be a nice addition, you know, like definitely once there is a contract that SAMRO sees that everyone who signed under this contract, everyone who contributed to the song actually signed, you know. Yeah, it would be a nice addition. Rather not from SAMRO.
Thank you for answering the question, by the way. Thank you.
Sure. So I wanted to ask, in working with vocalists, how do you let someone know you don't need them to overperform? Like, especially you get singers that really love how they sound, but you call them in for something different. Maybe you just want them to accent or to add to the ambience, or just their tone sounds nice and you want to add a lot of reverb so it, you know, warms up the whole song. How do you let them know, yo, you here, I like how you sing, but not for this song. You're just here to be another instrument.
I feel offended. I feel so offended. Oh, girl, you hurting me. Like, why do you want me there? No, nigga, go do your song.
What?
Like, go sing your own song. Let me tell you, another thing, producers need to be also vocally intelligent. So a producer needs to know the tone of what he's looking for in a song. And when you know the tone of what you're looking for in a song, you know who to go to. Don't go and take Beyonce and tell her to whisper. Or go and take this person and... No, if you know what you're looking for, you go to where you are looking for it and the person. Don't ever down someone's talent. Don't ever down someone's talent, because now you know me as this, now you want, I must come and do, I'm not your puppet. I feel offended.
Yeah, and sometimes people can expect you. I had this recently where someone was like, I want you to sing in the way you sang 10 years ago or however many years ago, and you have moved on from that. And then it's like, but actually my style has changed, you know. So I think I agree, please, you know, like one thing that I try to emphasize to producers is to try and listen to as many vocalists or as many singers as possible, because what tends to happen is you have, say, 3 or 4 vocalists who are doing really, really well, and then everybody wants to work with them. True. Everyone wants to work with them, and everybody wants a song with this person, that person. And Mark Francis once said to me, you know, as a producer, I'm looking for the vocalist who's going to give me my song. My song. Not the song, because if you're working with a vocalist who has 10 hits, the top 5 is what she's going to perform when she goes and she performs. Or if she's working with 50 producers, she's going to perform the top 5 songs. But if you look at vocalists who are underutilized, but who are super, super great, that people don't actually know, you know, and you see it as a chance to break talent on your side, to introduce people to new vocalists, I feel like more people need to do that as opposed to trying to find, you know, to get a vocalist who's like super popular and then you want to get that vocalist to get... No! There's so many vocalists who sing amazingly. Men, women, everything. You know, go check on SoundCloud, do your homework, and you will find the voice that matches your work, and it will be a great song. A great song. And it will be your song. The song you are known for.
Yeah, we're going to take 2 more questions.
So,
one here and one there. Sorry, my brother.
Okay. I just have a quick question regarding, like, you were talking about being disenfranchised, and I just wanted to know, I think there's a problem, like, you were talking about trying to institutionalize music and having everyone know the ins and outs of the industry. But I think companies, especially publishers and labels, have a vested interest in our ignorance and not knowing. Like, for instance, if you're independent, how hard or like how easy is it for your music to get played on ads, on radio even, you know, as opposed to someone signed to a publishing deal or a label? And also want to know, is it easy as well to monetize when you're not published, and how hard is it as well to own your music when you are published? I'm so. No, the first one is like how would you go about, especially if you're independent? So I'm just gonna change the wording, but how can you go about if you're independent, getting your music in galleries and ads and everything? And if you are not published, how easy is it for you to kind of? Oh no, I mean, if you are published, how easy is it for you to own your music? Because publishers kind of want to own it. So working with and without publishing.
Okay, so when you sign up to a publisher, there is a certain amount of percentage that you give up. That's a given. It's very difficult to go to a publisher and be like, oh, okay, I want you to publish my catalog, or I want you to take over my catalog, and not give them something. But it is possible to approach a publisher for an administration deal, which means they can just collect your royalties for you. And then that, I think, depending on the publisher, is like 10 to 15% or 35% for something like Gallo, or not Gallo, the other one. Anyway, Sheer, right? And then if you go to someone like Song Trust, which I think is owned by Downtown, which funnily enough just signed a deal with Sheer, is an administrative deal. So you go, you pay $100 for like the lifetime, and they take, I think it's like 10 to 15% for all the money that they collect. So it's possible to get an administrative deal where you're not actually giving, in a sense, ownership to the publishing company to then put it in their library, look for, work for it and whatever, because that's why they take as much as they do, because they have to activate that catalog, right? So you have two options. So if you're independent, I'm with Song Trust. I just need people to collect my money, basically. I need people to tell me where my music is playing, how it's being played, who's playing it. And especially if you're doing work that's being played internationally, it's great to have a publishing administrator, because they have all the connections and they'll collect the money for you, right? The other question had to do with getting your music onto ads and stuff. When you're not published, look, I mean, it's very difficult, even for people who are published. I know people who are with publishers and their catalogs are not moving at all, because the extent to which your music moves in terms of outside of it just being sold has a lot to do with other factors, like how popular it is. So if everybody's singing and dancing to your song on TikTok, next thing, people are looking for music for an ad. Oh shit, I heard this song on TikTok. People get picked up all the time. They do that all the time. So I think people need to understand that, yes, you can get a publisher, but a publisher can only do so much. It's like when you have a booking agent. You can't expect bookings to just come out of nowhere if you're not doing the work for people to know you and for your music to be popular, So all these things feed into each other. So that's, and of course you need to network, you need to do all those other things. But the fundamental issue is that for your music to actually go somewhere, you need to put the work in to make people know the music and to notice it.
Cool. Let's get one more question.
Hi, all. Just want to ask Wanda, just a small question. It's related to the song that you wrote, or that you sang, or that you did with Dakapo. Take your time. To get to that level where you write such a song, do you need to write it regarding a story that you saw, or it's a personal related matter whereby you have an issue and then you start writing a song? And then, because most of the time, I think producers, they need to have a person that jumps on a song, regardless what type of instrument it is. And you actually jumped on that track, and it was like you did the whole thing, the production and the singing. So I just want to know, did you write it related to a story, or it's a personal experience?
Okay, it is a personal experience. I feel, as a songwriter, I like to express what is real to me. So whatever it is that I'm going through at that moment, whatever it is that I'm feeling, that is the expression that I give or that I gave on that song in particular. So no, I did not produce the song. It was produced by Da Capo, but he sent me the beat. As we spoke about songwriting, he sent me the beat, and immediately I'm like, damn, I'm feeling this, you know what I mean? And at the time I was in this messed up relationship, and I'm like, I'm gonna write about this nigga, So I wrote about it, and I'm like, yeah, you don't know what you want when. So take your time, do you. So, and interestingly, it was a melody that worked, and it was, the storytelling and everything. So yeah, it was a personal experience.
Cool. Let me thank you once more, Jackie and Wanda. Let's give them a round of applause.